The past is not what it seems. Secrets buried, truths forgotten. Welcome to Strange History, where the unknown becomes known.
The Salem Witch Trials remain a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked fear and religious extremism. In 1692, a small village in Massachusetts became consumed by paranoia. This led to the deaths of 20 innocent people. Countless others faced imprisonment and ruin. These events, driven by superstition and ignorance, left an indelible mark on American history. The trials offer a glimpse into a world consumed by fear of the unknown. The early colonists, struggling to survive in a harsh new land, clung to their faith for comfort and guidance. However, this faith, twisted by superstition and a belief in the supernatural, would soon turn on them. The darkness that descended on Salem was not caused by witches, but by the very people who sought to eradicate them. Salem Village in the late 17th century was a community defined by its isolation and strict Puritan beliefs. Life was harsh, with the ever-present threat of disease, starvation, and conflict with neighboring Native American tribes. This constant struggle fueled a deep-seated fear of the unknown, a fear that manifested in a belief in witchcraft and the devil's influence. The Puritans believed in a world governed by God's will, where Satan was a constant presence, tempting and corrupting the righteous. They saw themselves as engaged in a spiritual battle, tasked with upholding God's law and rooting out evil wherever it may lurk. In this environment, accusations of witchcraft became a powerful weapon, used to settle personal scores, eliminate rivals, or silence those deemed different or disruptive. Salem Village was not a place of unity and harmony. Instead, it was riven by internal conflicts and resentments. Disputes over land, social status, and religious piety created a climate of suspicion and distrust among neighbors. This underlying tension played a significant role in fueling the witch hunt. The social fabric of Salem was further strained by its rigid hierarchical structure. At the top stood the wealthy landowners and church elders, who wielded considerable power and influence. Below them were the farmers, artisans, and laborers, who struggled to make a living and maintain their standing in the community. This disparity in wealth and power created resentment and envy, emotions easily exploited during times of crisis. To understand the events in Salem, it is essential to grasp the Puritan worldview that shaped their lives. The Puritans believed in a strict and unforgiving God, who demanded absolute obedience and punished sinners without mercy. They saw the devil as a real and ever-present threat, constantly seeking to corrupt the souls of mankind. This belief in the devil's power manifested in a fear of witchcraft. Witches, believed to have made a pact with Satan, were seen as instruments of evil, capable of inflicting harm, spreading disease, and corrupting the righteous. They were the embodiment of the Puritans' deepest fears, a tangible representation of the spiritual dangers that surrounded them. The Puritans lived with a constant awareness of their own sinfulness. Every misstep, every thought deemed impure, was a sign of their fallen nature and a potential invitation for the devil's influence. This created a climate of intense self-scrutiny and a yearning for spiritual purity. The Puritans sought redemption through strict adherence to religious doctrine, hard work, and constant self-examination. They believed that God's favor could be earned through righteous living and that any deviation from the path of piety could have dire consequences. This created a pressure cooker environment, where fear of damnation fueled a desperate need to prove one's faith and expose any perceived threat to the community's spiritual well-being. The rigid order of Salem Village began to crumble in the winter of 1692. A group of young girls, led by Abigail Williams and Reverend Samuel Parris's daughter Betty, started exhibiting bizarre and disturbing behavior. They suffered fits, contorted their bodies in unnatural ways, and screamed uncontrollably, their words often incoherent and laced with accusations. The villagers were both terrified and perplexed by the girls' affliction. Doctors were called in, but their examinations yielded no earthly explanation for the symptoms. With no rational cause to be found, the community turned to the supernatural. their worst fears taking on a terrible reality. Whispers of witchcraft spread through the village like wildfire, casting a pall over the already uneasy atmosphere. The finger of blame first fell upon Tituba, a slave owned by Reverend Paris. Tituba, originally from Barbados, practiced a blend of West African and Caribbean folk traditions, which included storytelling and herbal remedies. To the Puritan villagers, steeped in their own rigid beliefs, these practices seemed strange and threatening. Alongside Tituba, two other women, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, quickly became targets of suspicion. Sarah Good was a destitute beggar, known for her sharp tongue and unpredictable behavior. Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman, was ostracized for her infrequent church attendance and rumored impropriety. These three women, already marginalized and vulnerable within the community, became easy scapegoats for the growing panic. Under intense pressure and relentless questioning, Tituba confessed to practicing witchcraft. Whether her confession was coerced, a desperate attempt to appease her accusers, or a genuine belief in her own culpability remains a subject of debate. Regardless of its veracity, Tituba's confession sent shockwaves through Salem Village, confirming the community's darkest suspicions. Emboldened by Tituba's confession, the afflicted girls, now dubbed the Afflicted, began to name more supposed witches within the community. Their accusations, often delivered in dramatic fashion during church services or public gatherings, fueled the growing hysteria. With each new accusation, the net of suspicion widened, ensnaring more and more villagers in its deadly web. The accusations of the afflicted girls ignited a firestorm of fear and paranoia in Salem. Whispers turned into shouts, suspicion blossomed into certainty. The devil, once a distant threat, now seemed to lurk in every shadow, his presence felt in every heart. The tight-knit community, already fractured by internal divisions, began to crumble under the weight of its own fear. Neighbors turned on neighbors, friends betrayed friends, and families were torn apart as accusations flew like poisoned arrows. The very foundations of trust and kinship upon which the community stood were shaken to their core. No one, regardless of age, social standing, or piety, was safe from suspicion. The court, eager to appease the panicked public and root out the perceived evil, relied heavily on what came to be known as spectral evidence. This form of evidence, based on the belief that a witch's spirit could leave the body and inflict harm, was impossible to disprove. The afflicted girls claimed to see the spectral forms of the accused attacking them, their screams and contortions serving as proof of the invisible assault. The accused, often subjected to grueling interrogations and forced to endure the girls' theatrics, had no way to defend themselves against these unseen accusers. Their denials were met with skepticism, their pleas for reason drowned out by the cacophony of fear and superstition. The court, blinded by its own belief in the supernatural, failed to see the absurdity of this spectral evidence, allowing it to condemn the innocent and fuel the flames of hysteria. The trials themselves were a mockery of justice. The accused, often imprisoned in deplorable conditions, were denied proper legal representation and subjected to biased questioning. The court, swayed by public pressure and the girls' dramatic performances, readily accepted coerced confessions and flimsy accusations as proof of guilt. The accused, stripped of their dignity and denied their basic rights, faced an impossible choice: confess to a crime they did not commit and hope for leniency, or maintain their innocence and face certain condemnation. The very concept of due process was abandoned, sacrificed at the altar of fear and religious extremism. As the summer of 1692 wore on, the accusations continued to escalate. What began with a handful of marginalized women quickly spread to encompass members of prominent families, respected community leaders, and even young children. The net of suspicion, cast wide by fear and fueled by personal vendettas, threatened to ensnare the entire village. The accusations followed no logical pattern, seemingly driven by a combination of personal grudges, long-standing feuds, and the insatiable hunger of the mob for more victims. The mere act of questioning the trials or expressing doubt about the validity of the accusations was enough to mark one as a potential witch sympathizer. placing them in the crosshairs of the court and the vengeful mob. As the summer of 1692 reached its peak, so too did the frenzy gripping Salem. The trials, fueled by spectral evidence and the insatiable hunger of the mob, culminated in a series of executions that would forever stain the village's history. The gallows, erected on a barren hill overlooking the town, became a grim symbol of the madness that had consumed the community. Bridget Bishop, an outspoken tavern owner, was the first to hang, her defiant spirit unable to sway the court, convinced of her guilt. Her death, far from quelling the hysteria, seemed only to embolden the accusers and embitter those who dared question the validity of the trials. The thirst for blood, once unleashed, proved difficult to quench. One by one, the condemned were led up the gallows steps, their pleas for mercy ignored amidst the cacophony of fear and righteous indignation. Reverend George Burroughs, a respected minister, met his end with a prayer on his lips, his composure in the face of death a stark contrast to the hysteria of his accusers. His execution, along with that of several other prominent citizens, began to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of some villagers, but the momentum of the trials proved difficult to halt. The weight of lies pressed heavily upon the conscience of Salem. The jail, overflowing with the accused, stood as a testament to the town's descent into madness. Families, torn apart by suspicion and grief, clung to hope that the truth would prevail. But the grip of fear proved a powerful force, silencing dissent and emboldening those who sought to profit from the chaos. Among the condemned was Giles Corey, an elderly farmer known for his stubborn independence. Corey refused to enter a plea, believing the court corrupt. He endured pressing heavy stones crushing his chest. His gruesome death, witnessed by a horrified crowd, marked a turning point. Corey's end fueled whispers of doubt, revealing no one was safe from the mob. As the autumn of 1692 descended upon Salem, a chilling wind seemed to blow through the village, carrying with it seeds of doubt and unease. The relentless accusations began to slow as the air, heavy with lies, could no longer sustain the frenzy. Seeds of reason took root, pushing back against fear. The trials began to unravel. Doubts about spectral evidence once whispered were now openly voiced. The accusers, their credibility shaken, found their audiences less receptive. The court, sensing the shift, began to proceed with greater caution, its certainty replaced by doubt. The Salem Witch Trials, though a distant echo, resonate with chilling relevance today. They remind us of the fragility of reason and the devastating consequences of unchecked power. The events of 1692 urge us to confront intolerance and mob mentality. The trials show that justice without reason and compassion becomes oppression. They teach us that suspicion can spread quickly, poisoning trust and community. They compel us to question our beliefs and challenge those exploiting fear and ignorance.
The past is a shadow we'll never outrun. Thanks for venturing into the unknown with us on this journey through strange history. But this is only the beginning. Stay tuned as we uncover more secrets, unravel hidden truths, and walk deeper into the mysteries that shaped our world. Like, follow, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss what's waiting in the dark. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.